Good evening, curious people of the internet. Thank you so much for tuning in yet at another episode of the Entrepreneur's Kitchen. This is Friday. This is the end of the week. And we have started this week the discussions around racial discrimination. And we believe that it's a very, very important topic. Yesterday, I had two experts from the US talking, writing about racial injustice issues in different contexts. And one thing that stays in my mind was about it's no longer enough to be not a racist, but we have to be actively anti-racist. So we are still talking about this issue tonight as well, and with another expert on the racial injustice issue, but actually even more important than that, she's an expert in education and pedagogy. Thank you so much, Veronika Gmachl, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
It's really, really lovely that you agreed to join the show on more or less last minute decision. We have just spoken a couple of days ago. You are yourself from a pedagogical background. You have been leading one of the world's foremost encyclopedia, the Brockhaus encyclopedia in Austria, the digital branch of it. And you also face these issues in your day-to-day life on a very different context. Let's talk about that a little bit, Veronika.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Yeah. The personal context relates to my children. I have 3 children, and my daughter's father is Itzako, which is a people from Western Africa, and my son's father, I have 2 sons. Their father is Yoruba. Yoruba is quite a big people, and also from Western Africa, Nigeria. And my children are people of color, POC. My children were born in Salzburg, are raised in Salzburg. My daughter lived with me in Los Angeles for a while. So we had some experiences on the West Coast as well. And today, this topic just became very, very active in my life, particularly because many people ask me, what, racism still exists? So there's a degree of awareness here in Salzburg now that is, very, very new at the moment.
And this is in the middle of Europe, and you're totally right. Actually, when you walk on the streets of a city like Salzburg, when you walk around in a city like Vienna, even in Berlin, in larger cities, it's a very rare occasion that we meet people of color. And so it's still this otherness, this strangeness in our minds. But your family is facing it in everyday life. Can you talk about it a little bit from your family perspective? But I also want to hear, of course, about the pedagogical perspective, because that's your expertise.
Of course. From my personal perspective, I was raised in a family that is, for my family, racism didn't exist for my core family. So I was brought up to look at humans, not at skin colors. And it took me very, very long, honestly, to understand that I'm living in an utopia, really. Because you can say it as often as you feel like I'm not racist and colors don't exist for me and such. But at the end of the day, it's a systematic issue that just has a lot to do with privilege and a lot to do with a very, very complex set of historical facts that are still working within all of us. And so when my daughter was born, I started realizing that for her, showing up means being seen as a person of color, being different. And we had a lot of experiences whereby she, without being a teacher, became a teacher by her mere presence. So as a teacher of mathematics and biology, I taught in Salzburg schools. I taught in schools in underprivileged areas where even there's not a lot of people of color at that time, but there's a lot of immigrants from different parts of Europe mainly. And the immigration topic and the exclusion topic was very active in that regard. On top of it, I started noticing that there's a historical backline from the US American, from the time after the Second World War, where US American soldiers also procreated here. And there are some people that had this experience and were my father's age. So it was very interesting to learn all of these different complex situations. And I tried to boil it down to a very simple way of looking at things, but it's not really possible. So wherever you like a thread of like a ball of threads, and wherever you pull, you'll see a different perspective. Yeah.
And I mean, in your day-to-day life as a mother who is white, with a husband who is black, with kids who carry both, how did you deal with it? How did you kind of, how did you try, or did you ever try to help your kids forget, or, I mean, how do you cope with these issues?
Well, in the first place, when I started being in a relationship with a man from Africa, a lot of friends away. So in that context, I had the opportunity of not seeing color, because my people, they don't see color as such, so it's really a core friendship that was around us, that kind of sorted itself out. And but in day-to-day life, being faced with racism, for example, in Vienna, I was once in the subway with he's unfortunately now my ex-husband. I was in the subway with him, and a Viennese guy came up to me and told me, "Hey, but you do look pretty. You don't need to go with that guy." Things like that. And it's very important to speak up and to be present in this situation, not to talk down on the guy because he's just being violent with his words, right? So, but to really set the boundary right there and then, to kind of make a point and protect oneself. With my children in school, and that's something that has a lot to do with my professional life. I'm convinced that one way out of this situation is teacher training, awareness within the teachers. Because my colleagues and my children's teachers don't have much awareness. And there were teachers that would call my daughter, there was a primary school teacher that would call my daughter the N-word, to call her.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I speak to her and tell her, well, you please stop doing this. She has a name. Her name is Teresa. You may call her by that name. And she just, I didn't mean it in any bad way. There's just no understanding for this. And so I started researching our history, and there's a lot to be known about different shades of skin color. And even though Austria was never a colonial power in itself, the Habsburg had a lot to do with it. Historically, Europe in itself has a lot to do with it. So teachers need to be aware of this. And I think it's like we may have opened Pandora's box very long ago, but we are very, very good at just pushing it away into some kind of shady shadow area. And I feel that the moment now is very, very important for everyone to open their eyes, to grieve about what has been done wrong, in order to be able to continue.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I totally agree. And let's talk about also what we need to do actively in order to find new vocabulary, in order to open people's eyes and sensitize to the wordings, to this. Yesterday, someone was asking the question around, subconscious racism without actually meaning it. It's just because it's culturally so, we live with it every day, and you don't question, you don't question, these Austrian desserts that are called the N-word kisses, right? So, it kind of sort of becomes a weird normality Or just like we say Indian summer here, which nobody says in the US, which is actually very inappropriate. So, you know, these things, we need to be sensitive about those things. But before going there, the you know, enlightenment idea and about what we can do, we also have to think about what we can do in our kitchens and what are our ingredients. So did you think about something that you're going to prepare?
I brought actually a fusion of my origin and my children's combined origin. So I brought
Beautiful.
some plantain, which is we call them rotten banana because they look rotten, but they're actually plantain. And I have some eggs from my friend's farm. So it's Salzburg and Nigeria, combined with some tomato, which I'm going to mix with the egg, which is a really nice breakfast that we used to have. It's actually Nigerian style or African style kind
beautiful.
of breakfast. Fried plantain with the beautiful protein that's there. I'm not using oil, I'm using coconut oil. And,
awesome. And plantain is not sweet, is it?
It becomes sweet once you boil it or fry it, or you can also barbecue it, which is what we are experimenting with at the moment. So you need to make sure you don't buy them in a beautiful color. You need to wait. They need to be soft enough. And then there's a way to peel and to cut them. And then the best way for me is to salt them a little bit and then just put them into very hot coconut oil.
Awesome. So you're salting them. Excellent. I'm doing a fruit salad with a normal boring banana. Let me introduce the boring banana and some peaches and oh my God, how do you say Brombeeren? Bromberries? No. Well, some berries. Yeah, exactly. And our daughter, she said, "Mommy, those are they're very sour, so I need some honey." And I said, "We can't use any honey because it's only 3 ingredients, so she might just add some later." By the way, before we move on, let me tell people who are watching that if you guys want to ask any questions, please go to Slido. Our event code tonight is 34754 for any questions on racism here in the middle of Europe to Veronika, or you want to share your experiences, please go ahead and do. We're looking forward to hearing from you. So Veronika, what are some strategies with which we can actually train educational personnel? And then also, how can we reach out to the families of white families who are here in the middle of Europe, so they start watching their language?
I'm quite sure that the whole story begins with privilege. Understanding that, because there's a lot of people here who tell me, I've been treated in a racist way myself. I was once in this and that country, and this and that person did this and that thing. But the difference between my Austrian white friends here and people of color is that there's no place where the privilege situation changes. We women have a different situation to white men, so we may be able to feel it a little bit. But my daughter, for example, wherever she goes, wherever she shows up, she will be seen in a different way. And so I believe that allowing teachers to understand privilege, allowing teachers to understand what it means to be tagged in the way that people of color are tagged is very important. A second important factor for me is history. The most of the curricula and most of the history lessons in school are very Eurocentric still.
That's very important.
And there's always at least two sides to any story. So the fact that statues are being defaced now, that would be a way of making people understand when last were statues being disfigured or removed, and why was that, and why are those statues now being disfigured, and what exactly are the symbols that we have here in Europe.
But that's really a very interesting and sensitive ground, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you will always have people who talk about the historic value, the cultural heritage of, you know, certain artistic works that are around. On the other hand, we know that they stand for certain values that are so antiquated that it makes no more sense. So what do you think, where in your opinion, for instance, I let me just leeway for a second. I remember reading something just recently in Graz, well, how do you say it in English, the pest monument. They say, you know, Graz, the city of Graz has been visited through 3 monstrous, occasions: pest, Turks, and something, and one more thing. So, you know, and rats or something like that. So yeah, exactly. So the context is really, really ugly. So the question then becomes, okay, this thing has been, you know, put there in the 15th century. And do we still work to preserve it? Do we still stand for certain values of historic heritage? What do we do with that?
Well, the context, pests, Turks, and rats, is to be addressed. And then if you really look thoroughly at history, you will find out that the most fruitful things have come out of the contact between different cultures. Even though the contact may have been a warlike contact or actual war. The cultural transmissions that happen between people when they meet, this needs to be highlighted, in my opinion. I mean, I just visited a history class in a middle school here in Salzburg, and the teacher was telling the students about the Romans, us Christian Romans. She really made it such that the students in the classroom from different backgrounds would feel like us Christian Romans fighting the how do you say in English now? The Northerners, you know, those crude people like Germanen and all of these, you know, you could call them indigenous Europeans, maybe, right? So, and the way Chlodwig and certain northern figures were presented was so one-sided as the opponent, and that's supposed to be a history lesson. And it may be one side of the truth, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Yeah, that's why I like Chimamanda so much, the Nigerian author who's talking about the danger of a single story. I believe that we have to widen our scope. So in that context, the pest soiler would carry that story along with it. And that story would be told along with it. And then I think there's a need for an emotional aspect in school as well. And that I would call it grief work, because once you open your eyes and you see what your people or the culture that you actually live in and grow up in has done historically, you may not feel guilty as an individual, but you are part of the group. So there's room for grieving. There's room for real generative listening, and all those things are not taught in the university, in the teacher training universities. So for kids to have access to that, to multiple aspects of stories, I'm not for disfiguring and pulling down all kinds of statues. I'm much more about for telling the story and then deciding what to do, not out of the rage and out of the pain that comes along with the recently discussed problems in the USA that caused this now uprising of the Black Lives, although the awareness of the global awareness for the Black Lives Matter. So I would like to use that fraction to begin a thorough generative listening, a grief work, finding out what I just killed my stove. Finding out what's the other side, you know, what could be another side. And in that regard, I like the work of Arnold and Amy Mindell. It's called process work. It's a very nice blend of Jungian psychology, and it's a beautiful way of doing, of getting together. It allows room for grief. It allows room for, sometimes within a discussion, there's a ghost present, they say, like something that has not been addressed, you know, by those.
The elephant in the room, right?
Yeah, the elephant in the room. There's a big one there. So it's much about communication, about storytelling, and about allowing ourselves to do some grief work to be able to overcome the big gap between humans.
So if you were to revisit this whole, you know, my first question would be, how early can you start? And secondly, also, how should we reach out to the families so they can also revisit their understanding of, you know, racism, their understanding of, you know, how we talk about these issues?
But to the families, schools may be able to do some little things. I think families are much more influenced by the storytelling of the media. So if streaming platforms and TV stations could become conscious about the way they tell their stories, and just, you know, create narratives that help us pass this, then that might be much more effective than a school coming in with schools tend to come with the finger raised and you have to do this and look at this and da. So I think there's not much room for this, and that's a whole other topic, the education system in itself. So if schools want to do anything, then they could stand up when there's an incident, when there's a student, a person of color being attacked, being harassed, being shamed, being put aside, you know. Children tell me every other day there's a racist experience they make, either on the bus or at school. And if we stand up for that and involve parents, then I think that's just a very, very tough work on the ground, one by one, case by case situation.
But should we really wait until something, you know, surfaces, or should we actually, in the schools, for instance, go actively at these issues and address them actively, so people are conscious about them?
I feel that, first of all, there are enough incidents happening right now, so it's not much waiting.
Well, probably you're right.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, you are. Yeah, absolutely. You're in the middle of it. So yeah.
So it's like a dream. We all dream together in a way. So it's all there. And to wake up from that dream, there's enough incidents. On the other hand, I feel that if we address racism, structural racism at school, we need to be extremely conscious and aware where that activity comes from, and it will be from privileged people, because most teachers are not people of color. And I've heard stories from teachers that are people of color, born and raised in Germany, born and raised in Austria, who face their own sort of racism from both parents and colleagues and the world in itself. So we need to make sure that it's a bit dangerous what I say now maybe, but the white supremacy doesn't come through with those activities. It's very important to do something, but we need to be aware from which ground we start whatever activity it is, and we need to be aware of our privilege. And there's a nice Italian man that I listened to recently. He's African Italian, and he told a story about ancestors and ancestry, and I found it very, 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 very straight the way he was naming European ancestry. In a way, Europeans are victims very long ago and perpetrators in the same situation. So if you look at the ancestry and at the long history of Europe, we may find something on the ground of Europe. I've spoken to shamans and healers from Africa and South America, and they say for them, the world map, it has a black spot in Europe from their perspective, from their indigenous perspective. So also to work and develop a sensitivity to the European history, back, far back, would be helpful too. But that might take very long. So to do something here and now as a teacher or as a school system needs to come from an awareness privilege that is true and genuine. And only such, because I see me personally as a mother, I cannot really speak for my children. The reason I show up here now is because my children would come in. My daughter wanted to join us. She's 21. She just came back from a photo shoot, and she's really tired and drained. And she's been busy these days. People write her, people call her on her Instagram. She then decided to post something in regards to Black Lives Matters, and she's kind of drained because she's being called as an expert because she's a person, and
you know, I mean, it's like suddenly you find yourself in the middle of this, and you're like, I didn't choose it, and now I have to deal with all of the all of these problems I have nothing to do with. But of course you run into that, and I know you also appreciate this entrepreneurial spirit, and you are an entrepreneur yourself as well. Do you think that we can kind of maybe address these issues, or how do you see it? Is it this relationship of, oh, poor you, what can we do to help you, or can we find structures where in the middle of Europe people of color have more possibilities to self-actualize?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of activities, and I know so many high-spirited people of color born and raised in Austria, or immigrated to Austria or to Europe, who are very active in their jobs or in little startups or as artists, and we can take time and make an effort to find them, and they are out there. It's very easy. There's a thing called internet that makes that very easy, and we can support that and have a look at it and get into the discourse and meet everyone at eye level. And my daughter, when she published her statement, she wrote there that don't send me a private message where you tell me that you cried, because that happens all the time. Don't come with it, oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, it's fine. Be sorry. Be sorry. That's good. But then if you want to take a step further, then identify ways of finding out more, read books, make sure that you influence the media in a way that it would come up with the proper stories or with better stories than they are not now. Create awareness, buy with people, buy in shops that are run and owned, or support startups that go into that direction. Or, I mean, there are so many ways that one can just actively put a positive energy into this.
Yeah,
after grieving.
Absolutely. I think that is the ultimate answer to all of these issues, that people, just like we said in the beginning, that it's no longer enough to be not racist, but we have to be actively anti-racist. So we have to support businesses that are truly diverse, not only gender balanced, but also, nationality balanced, race balanced. I think we have to make conscious efforts around these things, that we actively fight against racial injustice and discrimination. And these things, whenever we see them, we have to actively address those issues, so they're not being, just, oh my God, another German word, salonfähig. How do you freaking say salonfähig in English? Okay, so we have to, we have to make an effort not to normalize what's wrong. I remember hearing somewhere, don't ask me where, but it says it's not enough to do it right, it's important to do the right thing. Whatever is being done right is no longer enough. We have to really fight and find the right things. Well, Veronika, we're almost at the end. And I know that we said, we wanted to maybe also invite your little son, but let's let him rest, and he can just enjoy the show on his laptop. I want to, as usual, ask you for the food. How's it going? You're not done yet.
I'm just trying to make it look pretty here.
Oh, well, pretty is not important. This is Entrepreneur's Kitchen. It just needs to be edible.
Excellent. Very nice.
Hey, look at this. Wow. Yeah, see, this is mine. My banana's already turned brown, so it's been waiting for a while. But good enough for my kids, so no worries. And whatever really serious topic we talk about, it doesn't matter. I think humor is very important, so we kind of get together, are able to laugh about things. And at the end of this show, I always ask people for a little anecdote or a joke. So do you happen to have one for me?
Yeah, my life has been very, very busy with homeschooling. So my relates to homeschooling, and it's like, how long does it take if you wait till the last minute?
How long does it take to?
How long does the task for school take if you wait to the last minute?
I don't know, how long?
1 minute. That's the logical fallacy my children always come with.
Oh, I need 1 more minute. 1 more minute. It's always 1 minute. Awesome. Okay, I have one joke. You can go and tell Malik. He's going to laugh about this.
Okay.
What is a spider's most favorite event?
I don't know.
A webbing.
Oh. I would tell him he would like that.
Yeah, since I thought he might be able to join, I prepared something that would be delicious for a little boy. Well, Veronika, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for talking about your private life, about your day-to-day challenges with your kids in the show. I think it's super important that we speak about these things publicly aloud, so people know that there is racism in the middle of Europe, guys. We have to take action against these things, and there is social injustice. Just because you have the wrong skin color, or you have the wrong looks, wrong being under attention marks. Thank you again, and I'm hoping that you will keep doing what you're doing. You are going to enlighten people, illuminate their minds, and It was lovely to have you on the show, Veronika. Looking forward to seeing you in a couple of days again in the analog world.
Thanks for having me and giving me the opportunity. There's still so much to it, but it's a great start and it's beautiful. I'm really, really happy that you take this topic so seriously and give it so much space.
Oh, yes, this was the whole week. And thank you guys very, very much out there on the internet, the curious minds of the internet. I'm hoping that you are not going to sit only on your sofas and listen to these things, because again, it's no longer enough not to be a racist. We have to be actively anti-racist. Whenever you see the opportunity, whenever you see something is going on wrong, please talk about it, please address it, and please take the risk so we can leave this world a better place for our kids. Thank you.